The Curse of the Old Library. In a small town in England, surrounded by dense forests and gentle hills, stood an old library that had been abandoned for generations. The library had once been the center of knowledge and education, but a dark secret had cast it into the shadows of history. The villagers avoided the building for fear of what lurked within. It was a stormy night when the young historian Emily Dawson arrived in town. She had heard of the library and its mysterious past and was determined to solve the riddle. Despite the locals' warnings, she decided to visit the library. Armed with a flashlight, Emily entered the dilapidated library. The old wooden floors creaked under her steps, and the dust in the air made her cough. Everywhere lay crumbling books and yellowed manuscripts. The shelves, once brimming with knowledge, stood empty and desolate. Emily made her way to the back of the building, where she found an old diary. It was the diary of Lady Eleanor, the last librarian, who had mysteriously disappeared over 100 years ago. The diary entries described the strange events that had occurred shortly before her disappearance. Lady Eleanor wrote about eerie noises at night, books that moved on their own, and a cold, invisible presence that haunted her. Emily read the entries with growing unease. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper, as if someone were calling her name. Emily, Emily. Her heart raced, and she quickly turned around, but there was no one there. She calmed herself and continued reading. Lady Eleanor had written about an ancient curse that lay upon the library. The curse came from a powerful sorcerer who lived in the surrounding woods. He had cursed the library after being condemned and banished for his dark practices. While Emily was absorbed in the diary, she didn't notice the shadows thickening around her. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut, and her flashlight flickered and died. Panic rose in her as she stood in the dark. "Who's there?" she cried, her voice trembling with fear. Again, she heard the whisper, closer and more intense. An icy hand seemed to brush her shoulder, and Emily screamed. In her panic, she tried to open the door, but it was locked. She was trapped in the library. Then, in the faint moonlight filtering through a broken window, she saw a figure. It was a woman in an old, tattered dress, Lady Eleanor. Her eyes were empty and pained, and her hands reached out to Emily. "Help me," the figure whispered. "Free us." Emily trembled all over, but she knew she had to find a way to break the curse. She remembered a passage in the diary that spoke of a hidden room beneath the library. With shaking hands, she searched for a secret entrance and finally found a trapdoor under a rotting carpet. With all her strength, she opened the trapdoor and descended a narrow, steep staircase. The room below was cold and damp, and the air smelled of mold. In the center of the room stood a stone altar with an old, ornate book on it. It was the sorcerer's grimoire. Emily opened the book and found the page with the curse. She knew she had to say the right words to break the curse. Her voice trembled as she read the ancient, mystical words. The room began to shake, and an invisible force gripped her. A piercing scream cut through the darkness, and then silence. Emily opened her eyes and saw that the figure of Lady Eleanor was gone. The light returned, and the library door stood open. The curse was broken. Emily left the library and saw the first rays of sunlight illuminating the sky. The villagers, alerted by the noise, came over and looked at her in astonishment. She had solved the mystery of the old library and broken the curse that had hung over it for so long. From that day on, the library returned to its former glory. The villagers came back to read and learn, and Emily was celebrated as a heroine. But deep within her, she knew that the dark secrets of the past could never be completely forgotten. The memory of that eerie night and the tormented soul of Lady Eleanor would accompany her forever.